It's that time again. Time for some more One Talent Challenge. I know what I normally do. Greetings and salutations. And I thought to myself, well, it's that time again. I need new things to do. I mean, I'm sitting here and I'm playing Pokemon Unite. I'm sitting here, I'm playing Pokemon. I'm playing Black Ops. I don't mind playing Black Ops. Don't get me wrong. I love it. I need to do more of the Season 1 Battle Pass. I'm having a grand old time with it. And I love this too. Doing this is like way different vibe than like Black Ops. Black Ops, I'm like edge of my seat, basically hovering over the microphone, that kind of thing. And it's like I'm on edge, because it's like I have to perform, I have to make sure I'm doing something. And even though, the SMG that made me lose my sanity there for a minute, I'm sitting there thinking to myself, it's fun. Even though it's way different. This is more of just like a chill, relaxed vibe. And as you remember the previous episode, the druid bit the big one. He's worm food. And I'm going to leave him there as a testament to him being worm food. But we're on the Barbarian. You're going to see a whole lot of bashing going on. It makes me think, maybe I should use mana potions. Just drop them in my bar somewhere. That way I can bash more efficiently. Because, yeah, I got to thinking about it. Yeah, I'm not going to have any way to effectively do damage in Nightmare and Hell difficulty. Then I thought, well, wait a minute. I get access to sockets. I can add sockets later on. This might be interesting because now I can take something like a rune or something of that description and possibly do elemental damage that way. The possibility's there. And of course, I'm going to have to deal with immune to physicals, but in order to become bulky later on, I'm thinking. Let me kind of deal with these guys first. The last thing I need is shamans going around resurrecting everything. Now, I'm thinking later on I can go into. Whoops. There we go. Obviously, I have to put into Bash. That's where my first talent's going throughout the entire thing. It's Bash. When I get to Nightmare, though, I can put into Iron Skin. Max out my Iron Skin gives me a lot of defense, gives me a lot of avoidance. I won't worry about dying. And then in Hell, I can do the natural resistance. The fights will be longer, but I will be bulkier. And I'm thinking if I could make him kind of like the Incredible Bulk, which is just going to end up being a really fat guy. Yeah, I mean, that might work. It's worth a shot. I mean, I'll have to get like mana after each kill. Hopefully that's what's on that ring. No. I got 1 mana after each kill over there, so that's a plus. Normally, as a barbarian, you'd want to get something like, Berserk. Something that will give you magic damage in order to kill the immune to physicals. Which, if you think about it, Diablo 2 was incredibly balanced that way. Each class had a way to deal with immunities. And in that regard of being able to deal with immunities, it made the classes still feel unique and interesting because they had their own set of skills, but they had their own way of dealing with, well, for lack of a better term, ne'er-do-wells. And so it's something to consider when playing, I guess, that, playing a character like a barbarian. Ooh, blocking. Yes, sign me up indeed. Energy, fire resist. That's better than what I got. What's she wearing? Nothing? Now she's wearing that. Thorns. Attack rating and gold from monsters. Never a bad thing. I know. I should just get Deckard Cain and worry about that there. Enhanced defense. Durability. Doesn't really give you all that much. Ooh, where are you? More bash. I just look at the game for what it is, and it's like I said, it was incredibly balanced for its time. I mean, every class had a way to cover their weaknesses, and that was pretty much unheard of, considering they were also inventing weaknesses at the time. Because when's the last time outside of say maybe Dungeons and Dragons, you'd hear of a mob, or Baldur's Gate for that matter, because Baldur's Gate was more or less just a visual Dungeons and Dragons on your PC. Where would you hear that somebody had a weakness or a strength versus something, or a resistance to? Rarely ever. Most of the games back then were just me have big club, me smash them long time. Pretty much. You can pretty much set your watch to, oh, here's another, dungeon crawling, hack and slash. And they didn't care about resistances or anything like that. It was just me smash them long time in face. Cool. And that was just kind of the way to look at it. And it's this kind of blazed a trail. Now, of course, I never played all of the dungeon hack and slash ones back in the day, so I could be missing out on a few. But at least in my perspective, this was like the game to do it with. And had to deal with another fly. They get really bad late fall, early winter. They're more annoying than anything else. But, this... I didn't play a whole lot of dungeon crawling hack and slashes back then. I played Diablo, but I'd played the original Diablo, which had resistances on your character, but I didn't think it had any of the immunities at all, which I'm pretty sure it didn't. It had extra strong and other affixes like that, but it didn't have, well, they were hidden affixes, but nevertheless, they still had them. And the mobs were stronger if they were named. But you never had anything that was like, oh, well, we can't be damaged by fire. And when Diablo 2 came out, it kind of set a precedent of like, this is how the new era of hack and slash RPGs is going to be run. It's going to be run... Wow, that's a really good scepter. Only I was doing a paladin. It's a solid Inferno Orb, too. Or Eagle Orb, I should say. Inferno Orb, listen to me. Like, this game really set a precedent. And to me, it was just... it was a good game. It was very solid. Well worthy of being a sequel to its predecessor. Now, that doesn't mean that it was the flawless epic masterpiece that people believe it to be nowadays. Because you have a lot of people looking back on it fondly and saying, well, Diablo 2 was a masterpiece. Haha. But it really wasn't. Like, I challenged people when Diablo 3 launched. I issued a challenge on the forums, and nobody took me up on the challenge. And I was rather shocked that nobody took me up with the challenge. But then, when you kind of hear the details of my challenge, I kind of understood it, too. I challenged them and said, I want somebody to play through Diablo 3, no patches, or not Diablo 3, play through Diablo 2, no patches, no Lord of Destruction, just 1.00. Install it with a disk, and play through it. And tell me how epic of a masterpiece it was. And nobody took me up on that challenge. Because everybody knew that it wasn't an epic masterpiece. Everybody knew. Because they knew the problems it had. They knew that there was no talent synergies or anything like that. Knowing this, of course, they avoided the challenge, and they were just like, nah, well, we're not going to do that. Meanwhile, the whole time complaining about Diablo 3. Diablo 3 wasn't an amazing epic either. It had its own fair share of issues, and didn't feel like a Diablo game at all. It felt more of like a half-baked Diablo, almost like it was the night before and they didn't have time to finish their homework, so they just copied it off anybody. That's how it felt. It felt rushed to completion and just half done. Almost like you're baking a pizza, but you get really hungry, and you pull it out, and the cheese is still frozen, and the crust is half done, and the pepperoni is somewhere between burnt and raw, and so you don't know what to do, so you just eat it anyway. That's pretty much what Diablo 3 was. But for people to sit there and downplay it like Diablo 2 was some sort of epic achievement, and it's like, Diablo 2 was only an epic achievement after the fact, right? After everything was done. It was the only thing. So it required, 15 years worth of patching and an expansion to make it perfect. And even then it wasn't perfect, because when they relaunched it in this remastered version, they still altered some things. Whoops. Didn't mean to bump the microphone. And they did. They altered some things in the remastered version. For example, druid summons now synergize. They never did before. Druids can now summon more than just wolves or a bear. Now they could summon wolves, direwolves, and a bear. They could summon an entire gaggle, a menagerie, if you will. They never could before. And it was, for lack of a better... I went the wrong way. I went to the cold plains. I'm a fool. Let it be known, far and wide, that I am a fool.
The Order welcomes you.
Nevertheless, I lost my train of thought. This is the first time I've really lost my train of thought. Normally I could just weave right back into it, but this is the first time. Diablo 3 did have its share of problems. Diablo 2 wasn't exactly picture perfect either. Then again, no game really is. However, the one thing I will say is Diablo was far and away infinitely better. Oh yes, that's what it was. They didn't perfect it in the original Diablo 2 because druid stuff, you could have a menagerie as a druid. And there's still a lot of things that don't synergize at all in Diablo 2. That's where I was. I had to retrace my steps. And there's still a lot of stuff now that just doesn't synergize. Necromancer curses, for example. You can't put more than one curse on, and when you do put one curse on, you have to hope that it's a curse you desperately need for your party composition. Otherwise, you're just wasting everybody's time. Ow. Because it's like, oh, I'm going to use amplify damage, and you have a party full of sorceresses and plague javelin plague javelin amazons, and poison necromancers, and it's like none of that works. I hate to say it, but it doesn't. Amplify damage does not amplify elemental damage at all. Amplify damage only amplifies physical damage. And at certain higher levels of amplify damage could actually remove immune to physical. Just like at high levels of lower resist, you could remove immunities to magic. Ow. Ah, yes, this is gonna go really well for Duriel. You can already see it playing out. Me not being able to cast and being absolutely pancaked. It's gonna be great. I better hope that I get a cannot be frozen between now and then. Like a death sash would be great. Or an ice blink. Something. Anything. I'd take it. Nevertheless, there's, higher levels of necromancers, lower resist, actually removed immunities. But you still couldn't synergize it well. It's like there's a lot of curses that are worthless on a necromancer. Dim vision, for example. Weakness. So on and so forth. There's just no point or purpose to a lot of the curses that exist. And I find it kind of funny. And that I was going to break down into, like, I find it kind of sad. That they didn't put that much forethought into curses for a necromancer, or somehow weave the curses into the poison and bone tree, or to somehow weave the curses into other trees to make them integrated that way. Have your poison skills for one area, have your bone skills for another area, and have your summon skills for a third. Not have poison and bone together, and then you could have your curses throughout the poison skills and throughout the bone skills, and have curses that actually helped those trees synergize. And even then, for the longest time in Diablo 2, poison necromancers and bone necromancers were worthless. I mean, there's a long-standing joke in my house. Well, my brother used to live here, my mom lives here, and my sister used to live here, but the long-running joke was, the joke from The Simpsons where Wolf Castle or whatever his name is. You know who I'm talking about, where he's just like, he sounds like Arnold. And he's just like, my eyes, the goggles do not sing. Him. Rainier Wolfcastle. That's it, Rainier. There was a long-running joke in my family, in my house, where we joke about the necromancer not having effective use of the spell teeth and saying, my teeth do not sing. Because they never did. They were pathetic. And that's just the kind of thing. It's like the game had its own faults and foibles, which is why so many people gravitated to Amazon, gravitated to Barbarian, and other classes that could, had almost like a fully fleshed out tree. Now, what I would love to see? I would love to see a free-to-play dungeon crawler, much like Diablo 2, with no real class structure. You pick spells that sound good to you, and then your class forms around it. So it would be kind of like Path of Exile, where you start going down this one class idea, and then as you pick some of these spells, they have certain spells that pair with it. Like, let's say I went down through and I picked up a thing kind of like Bash, smashes them in the teeth for extra damage, and, stuns them or drives them back or whatever. Something like that. And I paired it with, Charged Bolt for a sorceress. That would give me, like, Lightning Cleave. And the only way to get Lightning Cleave as a spell would be to go down that line. Then you could have passives that pop up in between. Some sort of like free-to-play structure, and you can make it so that you could have cosmetics and other microtransactions and so on and so forth, because we had this discussion the other day about microtransactions. I mean, you can put microtransactions in it and make it completely free-to-play model and still have it be an absolute smash. You just have to get the base game down proper. Which shouldn't be all that hard. And I've had ideas for games for a while. I mean, you could make it so that it would be a PvP centric game. And I'm talking, you take a game, you make it PvP centric to a point where you play your character and you go into these little areas like caves like this and dungeons and get experience and loot. Okay? Now, you can go and get PvP gear and PvP loot in that regard and, possibly better equip your character that way. However, it'd be much harder to get the PvP gear. Now, let's say that's the whole thing you want to do is you want to be that PvP character. There would be an auction hall where you can buy and sell your gear. You put it up, you set a market price, but it wouldn't be like a price in an auction hall. You know what I mean? That you can trade for it. It wouldn't be an auction hall, it'd be a trade. And it wouldn't be like sitting there spamming all day. No, not at all. What you do is you put in there, like, let's say, like I was saying earlier, I want a death sash, okay? So I would put in there, I want a death sash. What will I trade for it? I will trade a Siverb's icon, okay? Now, we all know Siverb's icon is kind of poo. That's not the point. I'm using it as a for instance. Now, you have what's called perfect rolls on these things because there's integers that give you flexible defense, flexible, plus the defense, etc., and so on and so forth. You can put in there, death sash, any percent, and then you could say Siverb's icon. I'm giving a Siverb's icon, and these are the percentages. So if somebody wants that Siverb's and you have it, you can trade Death Sash for the Siverb's. See what I mean? But the percentages and everything would have to meet. Yes, it'd take a lot of coding client side and everything to work that out. But at the same time, you wouldn't have an egregious gold system that can be abused. Those that have the money can buy anything infinitely. No, you wouldn't have that. You really couldn't have a pay-to-win structure because there would be no way to buy in-game gold. You have to get that. You have to earn it through killing. And there would be quests that you could pick up that would say, go kill X amount of this for gold. Go kill X amount of that for gold. And you would have to get it at your guild. Like your guild hall. Like in an isekai anime. You'd have emergency quests and other events that you could get on and do. Stuff like that. Keep it interesting, keep it fun. Now, what's the gold used for then? If you're not using it for buying and selling on the auction house, what can you do with it? Well, repair gear is one of it. I would also make the hardcore things so that if you were to play hardcore of this game, your characters when they die can be transferred over to normal. That way you are not losing the time investment spent into the hardcore character. It's not a complete wash. Fair assumption. But you would lose all the equipment on the character. So instead of getting a hardcore character full of equipment and full of a stash full of equipment, you would get just a hardcore character who's dead with no gear, but his stash would have all the equipment. And he would no longer be hardcore, he would be regular. That's how I would balance that out. Now, there would be caveats to this game. Oops, did not want to come back out of there. There would be caveats to this game, of course. And that is, considering is it a PvP-centric game, you would have PvP competitions where you would end up fighting against other players. And those PvP-centric competitions would be, you could be guild versus guild, and you can wipe an entire guild out in hardcore. But your player versus player would be fighting to the death. And when you've fought to the death, effectively, not only do you claim their head as a trophy, and you could display it in your guild hall that you've killed the player, or your own personal area that you've killed that player, you it would have a sign up right where the player died and who killed them. And it would have the player's last written words. So, like, if a player dies in combat, if the player dies in PvP combat, he could put up his last words written. Of course, people would have to moderate it for content because people today would put up things just to be meme-ish and whatnot. And it's like, look, I'm all for memes and everything. I get it. People like to be funny. But there are certain things you just don't need to be saying. Even if you're trying to be a meme, or even if you're trying to meme on somebody or something, there's things you just don't say. Plain and simple. And the signs can be left up right where the player died, and they wouldn't be like a physical post. They'd be a little, like a highlight mark. You know how in like Mario Maker, you could see the little markers and you could highlight them and it says what their comments were, the people that died there, or the people that succeeded the level. It'd be something like that, only for hardcore PvP deaths. There would be territories. There would be claimable territories, and those that control the territories get a gold bonus. Those that are in hostile territory, meaning, let's say I'm part of the guild called Grieving Souls. Yes, that's from an anime that I'm currently watching. But anyway, let's say I'm from a guild called Grieving Souls. And I go against another guild, and that guild happens to be called, like, the Luminous Lions or whatever. And we are at war with one another, but there's a third faction in between us that's not at war with either of us. This means that the faction I'm at war with would be hostile territory when I go there, and would alert them that they have a hostile target in their territory. And there would also be there would be neutral territory in between, which would be the guild that I'm not at war with. Now here's the fun part. If I go into hostile territory to do a quest, I get a bonus, a rather substantial bonus, to the quest reward, both experience and loot, for going to such a dangerous area. And even better, if I was to be tracked down and slaughtered by the enemy, they get a bonus for a bounty, because you see, you'd be at war with that guild. So anybody that's in that land would be worth bounty, but only the first time. That way you cannot encourage farming the bounties, which means you're not worth the bounty anymore after the first one. It prevents players from farming it. But it inspires players to go out and hunt him down for the bounty. Now, the bounty, of course, increases or decreases with the amount of hostile activity you've had toward the other guild. So if my Grieving Souls have been going around absolutely raffle stomping the Luminous Lions, the members that have been doing all the raffle stomping end up being worth more than, say, me, who would be off doing something else. Even if I was the guild leader, I'm not worth as much as somebody actually committing these heinous acts against the other guild. There would be nuance to it. There would also, like I said, territorial gains, territorial losses. And that would be sanctioned PvP moments where you fight over strongholds. And you have to take X amount of strongholds to take the territory. Of course, you'd have like 4 or 5 strongholds in an area. And you'd have to take over those strongholds. And once you've taken over those strongholds, you claim the territory and they have to move out. Now, Strongholds would need maintenance costs, but the maintenance cost comes in. This also loops back around with the gold. Maintenance costs come in by pulling gold out of the guild bank, which gold is then deposited, or a portion of your reward gold from quests is deposited to the guild bank. And when you finish a quest, it would basically says, oh, hey, here's your reputation, here's renown, you might become a better, more widely known player. For feats, for dangerous feats, like if you go and solo a quest that's normally meant for like 5 people, it would be notified that, hey, you soloed a quest for 5 people. Your name would get out there and people would be like, wait, this guy's pretty well known on the server. And you'd have NPC guards and everything in the castles and whatnot, and the fortresses. This, of course, would all be payable by guild gold. But you can also set a levied tax. But this is only for one specific thing. The levied tax does not affect professions that would make equipment. Does not affect equipment purchased or sold to vendors. So if you sell stuff to a vendor, it doesn't tax you there. And the tax is levied at half the rate for guild members than against other players. But it would come from gambling, where you would gamble, much like you do at Geed here in Diablo 2, you would gamble for the potential of getting good gear. A percentage of the amount of money spent at the gambler, at the gambling area, would go toward the fortress and the territory. So you want to inspire people to come to your area and gamble. And this is where the playful things would come in, where you're like, we had somebody who had an amazing hit here at this area, and it was this, and this. And you can kind of sell it like, hey, we got the hot gambling NPCs. You can get a lucky win streak, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Bob's your uncle. And you're trying to get people to walk through the door. If you're talking about a game that has the most player-driven stuff in it, I've got ideas that can make this game a hit. But in order for it to be a hit, you have to have it be free to play. Because that's the easiest way you can make a player base that would stick around. Plain and simple. People may hate the play to win, the free to play setup, but I hate to say it, that's the best way to bring a player base to your game and to bring eyeballs to your game. Make it free to play. And when you can do that, and you can do that effectively, you got yourself a winner. Now I know what you're thinking. What about bigger enemies, dragons, etc.? Yeah, they'd have those. Dragons, minotaurs, big, creatures of legend. They would exist. They would be rare to see. And they would be a group task to take down. Unless you're really skilled. And when you're really skilled, you would be able to take them down and everybody would know about it. Because people would be like, oh, that was the dude that took down the dragon. They'd look over and be like, hey, yo, there goes that guild. They're the ones that killed the entire fortress of whatever. And all these places where big battles happen would be labeled. But like I said, they'd be labeled like Mario Maker. You highlight it and it would say, this battle took place, da-da-da-da-da. And it would tell the forces who was there, right? It would have all the player names that participated and what happened. It would detail it out. That way you can have a record of what wars went on, what conflicts went on. It's an ambitious project. It's a very ambitious project. And people say, well, man, if you have these great ideas, why aren't you a developer? I have stupid hands. These hands cannot create. The mind can create. The mind is always creating. And the game would be balanced around PvP. You'd have 1v1 PvP, 2v2, 3v3, 4v4, and 5v5. And you would have arenas where you could go and really have your crew fight against another crew. And it would be for prestige. And people are like, what type of prestige? Simple. The prestige you're fighting for is you get your name on a banner. There'll be an arena season, right? Arena season 1 kicks off. So you and all of your best crew go and you go into the arena season. Of course, for hardcore, it would be more like a last man standing season. However, you'd kick off your arena season. Did I not have her translate the scroll? No, she didn't translate the scroll. I didn't take it to her. I got so caught up talking about my own game. And it would be just as simple as this. It would be just like this, except there would be healing classes as well. And by that I mean you would have classes that could actually cast heals. You wouldn't need potions. So your 1, 2, 3, and 4 down here wouldn't be potions. Your 1, 2, 3, and 4 would be, certain things you've tasked to the hotbar or the hotkeys. And there would be ways to raid dungeons too. Like there'd be, I've thought about a lot of things. A lot. And all the ideas are up here. And it's just stuff that I would have loved to have seen in a game like this. Like isometric 2D, not 3-dimensional. But you have to make things, like you have to make the professions worthwhile. You have to make the game easy to pick up, difficult to master. You have to put all that care into it. Otherwise, you're just not going to have it. And, people would say, well, wait a minute. If you have all these ideas, why don't you get together a group of people to make it? Believe me, if I had the ability to get together a group of people to make it, I'd be making it already. But at the end of each season, at the end of each arena season, you would have the honor and prestige of having your name truly immortalized on an in-game banner with your team logo and everything. And there it would be for everyone to see. From now until eternity, you were the Season 1 winners. And then the Season 2 winners and 3 winners and so on and so forth. And that notoriety would be there. And you wouldn't have to make more than one character. Solely because if you were to put if you're to make a character on the game, you could wipe your stats, your stat sheet, your skill sheet, everything, and build a whole new build. You wouldn't be stopped from doing it. There's no, respec cost or anything. Nope. but you have to be at a specific person to do it. I'd make sure that you had to be at a specific person, so you can't just do it on a whim. And there would be a cooldown. So you can't just do it on a whim and then be like, oh, wait, I didn't do this or I didn't do that. I'm going to redo it. Or I'm going to do this for this one fight, but then I'm going to do this next thing for the next fight. Nope. One shot. And then you have to wait X amount of actual days to do it again. And that's exactly the way it should be. Now, like I said, I would love to be able to produce this game. I'm going to throw words like on the ground. I don't need it. I'd love to be able to produce that game. I would have loved nothing more than to sit down and be the creative mind behind the entire game. Right? Be able to cast barrier magics, be able to do, cast damage over time magics that ramp up and then explode. Be able to do damage over time magics that when they ramp up and they explode, if you have allies nearby, it heals the allies instead of damaging the enemies. Just random stuff that has not been done before. Stuff that would technically blaze a trail. That's what I want. That's what I want to build. People would say, why are you trying to reinvent the wheel? Why not? Someone's got to do it, right? It's a 2 to 10. Not bad. That's 2 to 9 with poison damage on it. I like that. I'm hoping for a good one. Ooh, 2 to 10 with 6 poison damage, fast attack speed. We'll set you off to the side. A couple more. Really? One more. One more. I can feel one coming. Oh, well. Maybe next time. It does more damage. Anyway, that's the way I want to do things. That's the way I want to run things. But that is going to do it for this video. If you watched this video and you enjoyed it and you like my idea of the game, I already have a studio. Not studio. I have a doing business as. I have a... It's called Bloody Forehead Entertainment. I do have my own... It exists. I have my own technical business. I could technically make it under that name. If you like the idea, leave a comment. Maybe we can put something together and make it a passion of love. Make it a passion of love. Listen to me. A labor of love. A labor of passion and a labor of love made for gamers by gamers and about the people that loved games like this for what it is. This type of view right here. It doesn't have to be overly phenomenal. It doesn't have to be overly fast-paced. You can have unit collision and people being phalanxes so they can prevent people from barging in the doors. Just amazing stuff like that would be incredible. If I can get it done and I can do it mechanically, not mechanically, if I could be the creative mind behind it all, let's see what happens. But if you enjoyed the video, I hope you enjoyed it, because I know I did. And if you did enjoy the video, I hope you watch some of my other series. I mean, I got Pokemon Regulation H battles. I got Pokemon Unite. I've got But Will It Snipe. I've got Black Ops, other stuff on there. I put up a couple things that should have been shorts but didn't come up as shorts. They're up there. I do a lot of other things. And I like to have a lot of fun with it. So if you enjoyed this video, try watching some of the other stuff I put up. I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed playing it. I hope you enjoyed doing it as much Pardon me. Hope you enjoyed viewing as much as I enjoyed playing it. As always, these videos are unedited, and they will never be edited. That's my solemn oath. And those short ones that I put up there about the grenade launcher and the pistol sniping, those were VOD clips pulled from my stream. So, those aren't technically edited, those are just clipped. Not technically edited. Nevertheless, everything on this channel will be unedited. As always, I hope you have a fantastic evening, a wonderful tomorrow, and as always, have a good one.